Thank you, Stephen. As Stephen said, I don't have a presentation. I have comments and reflections on the other presentations. So forgive me if I organize my notes as I talk. I'm a big fan of megajournals. I'll just say that to start with, so I'm not building up to some strong objections. I liked the vision of PLOS One when it started, and it was the first one. And I'll talk more about that original vision and how it changed, and I want to talk about the reasons for the change. But my reasons for liking it at the beginning are still my reasons for liking the megajournal model, and I'll just mention those briefly. By focusing on soundness only, methodological soundness only, and not significance, megajournals are allowed to publish faster. They're allowed to make the work open and public faster. It could be public without being open, and in this case it's both. So they increase speed. Any increase in the speed of publication increases the speed of research itself because it enables the readers to build on the published work more quickly as well. It also reduces cost, and I think it's more appropriate than traditional review. In traditional review, where the peer reviewers are asked to assess significance, we're really asking 1, 2, or 3 people to assess significance prior to publication, when significance really ought to be judged by the entire community in that field over time. Sometimes significance is not obvious at first to anybody, let alone 1, 2, or 3 people, and we ought to delegate that assessment to the community at large. So if we drop it from the job of the peer reviewer or the journal, then we invite the community to take up that job, otherwise it won't be taken up, but we also enable speed and cost savings at the same time. That's still, I think, the set of benefits that makes megajournals possible. But I agree with Simon's point that soundness-only peer review is the key to all of those benefits. So I had a couple of questions about that. I know the researchers are still digesting the responses from their surveys, so they don't have good answers to all my questions. But one of my questions is, what do researchers think about soundness-only peer review? What do researchers as authors think, and what do researchers as readers think? As authors, they might think they're going to get less of a prestige bump from publishing in that kind of journal, and they need that prestige bump for their career. They might think that, but they might not. They might welcome the fact that their journal is more likely to be published, and that it's available to their own disciplinary community more quickly. Readers might wonder whether they're getting the same imprimatur or recommendation from this kind of journal that they would get from a conventional journal that also assessed significance. Now, I'm not sure those readers are paying attention to what's going on at the high prestige journals that are trying to assess significance. That is, there's evidence that journals with higher impact factors also have higher retraction rates, and they're not doing a very good job of assessing even methodological soundness. But we still have a culture of giving prestige and career points to people who are published in those journals, and readers might take that seriously, so they'll regard an article in those journals as coming with a stronger recommendation. Authors might buy into that culture and would like to get that endorsement for their own articles. So I'd like to know whether the surveys show authors and readers seeing the benefits of megajournals. Obviously, plenty of them do, because these are very large. But if plenty of them don't, I'd be interested in whether that's true, and I'd be interested in whether authors and readers differ with one another, because as scholars, we have different interests. Our interests as readers might conflict with our interests as authors. This was a problem in the early days of the open access movement. Scholars in their capacity as readers wanted open access. Scholars in their capacity as authors didn't always want it as much. One of the questions in the early days of megajournals was, if they're really wide in scope, if they're really multidisciplinary, then why wouldn't one suffice? Why do we need more than one? And at first we only had one, so it was an open question. Will there be another one? And then there was another one, then there was another one. And one question was, how can they compete with each other? Or will one of them kill off the others? First of all, I'm glad to see that others had the courage to try it out, even though PLOS had already occupied the field. And as you know, they have taken some PLOS submissions, and there are at least a dozen of these things. So it's a fact that more than one of them can coexist. But I'm interested in why they coexist. Why would an author submit to one of these rather than another one? And if you look at the specific distinctive features of PLOS One that York mentioned, we can zero in on those. Do some authors think that one of these megajournals is actually better at assessing methodological soundness than another one? That is, even though it's a limited type of peer review, does one journal do it better than another one? Do authors have an opinion about that? Have they compared journals? Do they try to judge that? Do they care about the reputation of the publisher, regardless of the quality of the journal? If one of these is from PLOS, which is a relative newcomer, and one of them is from Nature, which is not, does that make a difference to authors? Does it matter to authors that PLOS is nonprofit? It matters to me, but does it matter to authors? Does that actually attract submissions? PLOS has a wider scope than some others. There are some that are limited to just physics, some that are limited to the social sciences and humanities, but some that are welcome submissions across the board. Do authors care about the scope of coverage? That is, would an author deliberately submit to a journal with a very, very wide scope? Or do they only care about readers in their own field? So if it was wide enough to cover their field, that might be good enough for them. Or does it matter to them that the journal is even wider than that? PLOS One has this innovative open data policy, which I endorse. I wish all journals had it, including non-open access journals. But what do authors think about that? I know some authors are not ready to make their data open on the date of publication. So in that sense, the PLOS policy might be a deterrent to those authors. How many authors are actually treating it that way? And then PLOS does more with social media and other innovative forms of promotion than other open access, other megajournals. Does that matter? I'm pretty sure authors have noticed that, but do they pick the megajournal that's better at promoting their article than another one, which simply might have disciplinary relevance and brand? Now, back to the original vision for PLOS One. PLOS One originally wanted to do minimal in-house pre-publication peer review for methodological soundness, and then delegate the larger job of assessing significance to the community at large and to post-publication peer review. But it discovered that post-publication peer review didn't work as well as it hoped. And so it retreated and did more in-house pre-publication peer review than it expected to do, and less post-publication peer review. I endorse both steps. That is, I endorse the step of trying to minimize in-house pre-publication peer review and delegating the rest to post-publication, but I also agree that it was not done very well, not just at PLOS One, but anywhere. Post-publication peer review is the kind of thing that I would like to see work well, but has taken a long time to improve, and it's still an open question whether it's working well enough. One of my questions is, what about the other megajournals? I know they exist. I haven't studied them all carefully, so I'm actually asking a question that I could answer if I spent a little time on it. But are they doing as much or more or less in-house pre-publication peer review as PLOS One? As they come into the market and they try to attract authors and steal them away from the others that are already there, do they try to attract them by doing more in-house pre-publication peer review or less in-house pre-publication peer review? I really don't know the answer. And a related question, if you agree with me that post-publication peer review could be done better than it is today, certainly could be done better than it was 10 years ago, how could we improve it? It seems to me that if we could improve it, then we would improve megajournals, but also open access journals, also conventional journals of all kinds. It would increase the speed of peer review, it would decrease the costs of peer review, and it would help solve this problem of giving the right job to the appropriate group of scholars. That's an open question. I know there are a lot of smart, motivated people working on the problem of making post-publication peer review work better, but are the megajournals taking up the lessons from those experiments? And are they taking them up at the same rate? Are some of them paying attention to those experiments and some of them not paying attention? I'd also be interested in the results from the surveys on whether some authors find that their promotion and tenure committees simply don't give points to publication in these journals, whereas they do give points to conventional publication. I'm sure some promotion and tenure committees do that. I know some to be very conservative. But these have been around for a while now, and they've been building reputation. They certainly have impact. So is that changing the minds of the members of these committees? Moreover, the members of these committees are themselves increasingly members of the digital generation. Again, I don't know the answer, but I'd be curious to know. And finally, a hard question for PLOS, but also the other mega journals. It's true that mega journals bring in more revenue per paper than conventional journals. They have lower costs, and their moderate article processing charges are still enough to bring in greater revenue. At some point, if the revenue is great enough, should mega journals reduce their APC so that they're charging just their cost of production plus a moderate markup to plow back into the enterprise? I think one of the dangers of APCs is that they will drift away from the cost of production to whatever the market will bear. And I'm not saying that mega journals are doing this, but if a journal committed to charge just the cost of production plus a markup, let's say 5 or 10%, something you could even publish, then we'd know that the fee was truly moderate and it was not going to grow to reflect market pressure or to reflect what the market could possibly bear. And even though the journal might be making an awful lot of revenue today, it would still make sufficient revenue under this other model. So if the model is successful in generating revenue, then the question is it making too much? Could we actually enfranchise more authors by lowering the APC? Thanks.
Thank you very much.